Even if it's wrong. Something's got to happen here. You already have it. Hey, how are you? Hi. There you have it. I'm coming back there. I'm a professional handouter. Every
You're a
teacher is.
professional handout. Thank you. And there's
A lot of teachers hide behind their handouts. You know, they give enough handouts. You're going to work. You're going to try to. I'm going to do better. You know, you teach class the second time. You do better. I'm going to do better than the last one. You're gonna queen this moment, and I'll tell you what that means. Turn to page 3. It's called a practice, 4 cues. This session's about practice. Whether you're a classroom teacher, whether you're an administrator, all of us are educators, right? So it's your practice as an educator. So if I'm talking about an English classroom, you need to translate it to whatever you do, right? There's an application. You're smart, right? You'll figure it out. In fact, you need to challenge yourself with that. So here's the 4 cues. Ready? This is a live thing. It's actually, I don't know where it's going to go. We'll see. It's up to you. All right, let me get one so I can see what we're reading. We're not going to read all of it. All right, this is about an English classroom in particular, but it's used also in many, many, many other classrooms. You could use the same sort of thing. By the way, this is anti-coverage. Teachers try to cover their material, right? It's anti being controlled by your own curriculum as if you didn't exist as a teacher. Well, what we're talking about right now is not best practices. We're talking about best persons, right? Best practices are dead. They exist on the shelf, even if they've been studied, right? They mean nothing until you pick them up. And even when you pick them up, you don't implement them as is. That doesn't even make sense. I mean, if you don't morph a best practice into your own style and your own, you have to have an aesthetic as an educator, right? You're a designer of educational experiences, right? And part of having an aesthetic is being a best person. You're the one that has to stand there and do the work, and usually on your own. You're the one that has to go to bed with yourself and the whole 9 yards. A best practice won't help you sleep. And by the way, a best practice, which is referred to all the time when you talk about educational reform, it's the main reference point. Everything's going wrong in Tennessee, best practice. Everything's going wrong in California, best practices. Everything's going wrong in Kentucky, best practices, right? Everything's going wrong in this county, best practices, right? That is the constant refrain. We know that they do not change cultures, best practices. There needs to be a new refrain. That's part of the argument. And that new refrain is best persons, right? And best persons who make practices best, I guess. Maybe we'll call them promising practice that are made best by best persons. Whatever we want to say. Does that make sense? That refrain gets us off the hook. The teachers are on the hook, not the best practice. The best practice is going to sleep well every single night. And no matter how much John Lennon screams at it, right? How can you sleep at night? Remember that song? He screamed at Paul McCartney when he went commercial. And his song is like, how can you sleep at night? Have you ever heard that song? It's kind of wretched to listen to. And it's just directly to Paul McCartney saying, you sell out. All right, here's the cues. We'll practice live reading and working of text in our classrooms. This practice will provide the time and the environment for our students to work with the words and sentences of their assigned text in the classroom space. They'll be encouraged to speak back to their text, to summarize, gain control. They will respond with personal experience questions, all forms of annotation. Our aim is to create reading experiences where the reading materials become meaningful, relevant, edifying. You now are already doing the work. So what you should do is anything I've said or anything you've heard that you like or you're attracted to or you want to challenge, you should start to annotate, right? Because when you queen at the end, what queening is that all the language in the room is available for you to make a thesis out of, a pedagogical thesis about your own practice, right? So by the end of this session, you guys are all going to come up with either paired queens, because you guys are buddies, or an individual queen that you could take home, where you take all the things you learn and you hold them like a thesis. You control those thoughts, and they could be your things, by the way. You can not give a dang about any single thing I say or present to you, but you pull down from that and you queen that, and it becomes a sort of a theory or a pedagogy for you. Sorry if I'm talking behind your backs. It's not nice. You guys are so spread out. I shouldn't have let you spread out. All right. Reading assignments will be guided by a question, blah, blah, blah. We will use a generative process for guiding reading so that students in the emoji community go beyond merely struggling to comprehend what they mean. Following practice: quoting, queasing, connecting, and queening. Right? So it's very simple. Take quotes that you like, phrases that you like, whether they're said by your friend, me, or the text, or the students we're about to watch. That's your quoting. And you can maybe not like them, but somehow there's an attraction. It doesn't have to be like. We're attracted in lots of ways. You grab those. That's language, right? You need ingredients to think. That's some of your ingredients. Then you queeze them. Start to make sense out of them. You squeeze them, right? That's what you tell your students is squeeze the meaning out of that text, right? That's analysis. Now we're starting to talk. The beginning of analysis is you sort of randomly queeze. You randomly start to make sense out of what you're hearing, and you trust your mind. If you're going to be a best person, you have to trust your mind. We have to teach our students to trust their minds, especially our developmental ed students. If they don't trust their minds, they absolutely are. They might be good kids that make it through, good school kids, but probably not, actually. That's the whole point. Then you connect. You make connections. I think Dr. So-and-so in there was. Koo. Go? Koo, sorry. He was saying that, make connections. As you start to connect, you're queasing. So now you have some language quotes, some language queasings that are somewhat random. You making sense out of what you're hearing. Now you're making connections. The QU, by the way, came from the students, because I used to call the thesis a queen, and they liked it so much they QU'd everything else, right? Including connections. So you start to connect. Now that's meta language. That's analytical language where you're connecting some evidence, if you're a lawyer, some analysis of the evidence, and you're tying two pieces of analysis and evidence together, and you're starting to make a case for your understanding of something in psychology, sociology, in English, and stats, and whatever. This is how you're learning. And then you have to queen it, right? It's a typical academic essay written backwards, in a way. Right? It has all the elements of academia. And one thing we're talking about here is helping our students. I don't know who you are, what your job is, but I'm specifically focused in the organizations I work with on students when they're the most vulnerable, right when they come to school. Right? It could apply beyond that, but I'm absolutely zeroed in on that moment where those students are coming onto the campus and trying to make it through that first year. My school loses 40% of every student that starts every semester, right? Most schools do, at community colleges, in California at least. I don't know about here, but we lose almost half of every new student we get within one semester, and very few of the students reach their educational goals in the college. All right, so you're going to do that. Does everybody have that? So everybody should at least have one quote already. I don't care what it is. Otherwise, you're not working. You're like just sitting here waiting for something to be given to you. That's no way to learn. Take one quote. I don't know what. Tell your friend what quote you have so far. Here, you could be with these guys or those guys. I think they're nicer. Yeah, I can feel it. Oh, am I moving around too much?
No, you're fine. For some reason, you're very hollow on the video.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're in a very deep tunnel.
Oh, and she can't be left out. Oh, no, that's not all right. You can't let a student opt out. No way. You can't. Once you let them opt out, it's like a kid not saying, I don't want to run. And all the other kids are going to run? Heck no, she ain't running, I'm not running. No way, you just can't do it. You build a culture where everybody's voice matters, and everybody's voice matters from that day on, period. They don't go back off of that, they expect it. All right, here's Bell Hooks' challenge. We're on page 1. All right, let's read it in the bold. Now, I turned the mic up, they did, and so now, if I'm too loud, sorry. Our challenge this session is to go live, respond to Hooks' call below to articulate a new theory of learning, a new pedagogy, a new methodology. Right? You're going to come up with a queen. That's your challenge. The equation, the props in our class, our task is to take some perspectives from students. That's the film we're going to watch. Right? So it's a student perspective, it should say. I left the word student out. Love, a learning environment. And you could see, just look down the sheet. Love, affective domain, a learning environment, porch talk. If I were, that's on the next page, that's James Baldwin. If I were your teacher, right? An identity, that's Cornel West talking to community college in Oakland, right? Talking particularly to students. The agonistic nature of being a teacher, being an educator, and the practice that we just talked about. And you're going to come up with a queen. So let's think of, in case you're not getting the exercise, here's what it is you're collecting language. You're a poet, you're a thinker, and all the language you're going to take in, accept, riff off of, add your own to, your group members are going to add, and in the end you're going to have a pool of language that you draw from. It's like having a whole bunch of ingredients on the counter, and you're not going to necessarily open all those up. You can't when you're queening, it's too hard. But you're going to say, out of all these ingredients, I'm going to do some of this, I'm going to do some of that, right? So that's what you're going to do. So you should be very, very active the whole time, and I'm also going to start and stop you the whole time. And I'm going to be, I don't know you, so nothing's personal, but I'm going to sort of, if you're just messing around, I'm going to ask you not to. Okay, here we go. This is students. Check out this thesis, by the way. If you, don't look at that. It's just a silly PowerPoint. If you don't have enough humility to be loved, there's no way you're going to be liberated. That's an educational philosophy. Is actually teaching your students, who might be full of fear and might have all sorts of other things, how to have that humility to open up to their own potential, to what you're trying to provide, so that their education can be used for themselves to get where they want to be. Because our students aren't necessarily resistant, but they're not necessarily open. They don't know how to be. It's difficult. They're not necessarily part of this academic culture, right? And so, in other words, liberation takes humility, and actually part of teaching is teaching humility. Now, obviously not directly, like humble yourself, young man, or something, right? Maybe sometimes. If your student trusts you, you can almost say anything. But humility in the sense of being quiet in the face of something great, a beautiful, if the students, if you present a beautiful artist or something, teach quietness. Our culture has no quiet space. Our culture is loud, it's crude, it's crass, it's distracted. That's what's on the media all day. That's what's on the radio. Everybody's getting sold. And so we need to teach quietness in some way. We need to feel our way through that respect. All right, so let me show you what these students were doing. That was just more language. I'm just practicing on you, see what resonates. You don't have to teach a book. Let the book teach itself, right? Psychology course could teach itself, like literally, if you would just be quiet. It sounds strange. It's ironic. It's supposed to be ironic. All right, why can't I find Kentucky? Oh, here it is. All right, this is quick. Can you see that? So the film I'm going to show you it's all the films. We've made 100 films. We've interviewed. We started this thing called Student Voices Across California. So, and I'm part of 2 organizations. One, Umoja, means unity, and the other one's Acceleration in Context, which is very much challenging, and they're very interrelated. They work together. We share teams, schools. We go and share training sessions, the whole 9 yards. We both have boards. We both we both started with no permission and no money. No one in the state told us we could do what we're doing, and we're working with 50 schools out of 112 in California. And we're not belligerent. I mean, we respect the state. We go to the Board of Governors and share our stuff and so on. But the states are slow, and states don't know how to get horizontal with teachers. They know how to bring in best practices, but they don't know how to get in the space of teachers and do the kind of so-called professional development work that dignifies teachers, helps them feel themselves, helps them become best persons. They don't know how to do it. They're not equipped for it. It's not in their DNA. So that's why we exist. So this is, you'll see these gentlemen talking right after this. This is the exam they just walked out of. This is a lowest level students in the college. They are brand new to the college. They come from, all of them come from Oakland, which is one of the worst public school systems in the country. It's an open access course, 1 semester integrated reading and writing that leads to freshman comp, right? So we used to have 6 levels of separate reading and writing. We got rid of all that, and we integrated it all into 1 semester. And the basic theory is, if we want the students to do well in college, they should be doing college work from the first day they step on. That the whole concept of remedial education as itsy-bitsy pieces that are a step ladder, where we've itty-bitty-fied the curriculum into all these small, like, then they do this, and once they do this, they can do that. That's like saying in minor league baseball, all you do is bunt. That's insane, actually, as a theory of education, right? Of course, in minor league baseball, sometimes they have bunting practice, but they play the whole game. They feel themselves and their identity attached to the whole game, to all the drama of it, to the good plays, the bad plays, to where they need to be sharper, right? And if all they did was bunt, they would quit. They wouldn't sustain, except for the poor suckers that were hoping so bad to be drafted by the majors, they would stick out those classes. So that's the theory, is that they should do that. Of course, it shouldn't be exactly the same, but they should have big ideas, adult ideas, and so on. All right, so these students just took this final exam. These are, quote, 4th grade reading level students, 5th grade. I don't know if we don't use that lingo in California anymore, because we hate it, most of us, because it doesn't say much. All it does is basically say, that student, there's no way they're ever going to make it. Damn, we're dead here in Kentucky. So here's their final exam, 2-hour final exam, no note, they can't use any notes. This is the study guide for it, and they had to write essays on all of these, preparing. They didn't know which one was going to be on the exam, right? And so I'll just read it. Each of these questions must be considered within the context of, in conjunction with Man, Child, and the Promised Land. They read that book. In this class, they read 600 pages about. They had 12 different texts, and they wrote about 40 to 45 finished pages of analysis. All of it's thesis-driven, all of it's evidence-based, all of it's analytical. Doesn't mean they also didn't write a lot of personal stuff. They did. They did all sorts of personal writing. They shared what they were learning with their relatives. All sorts of stuff happened in there. But they did that so that they could be successful in college. So if you outline the answers, this they got the week before, even to the point of writing out a queen, right? With the logic of the argument to go with it, you will do well on the final exam. I expect you to work in study groups to prepare. It's okay if you share ideas and strategize arguments and approaches together. In fact, we should, particularly for developmental students and maybe for all students, and they do this in the workplace, we should always tell them they could share ideas. Sometimes we say you can't share ideas because then 2 people have the same idea. It's like bizarre. So, I mean, you could even take that to the extreme. Have 5 people write 1 paper and write all their names. You could do all sorts of stuff. 1 class paper, everybody writes a piece of it. 1 one project in, that's a service learning project in the community about water, and everybody takes, some people do statistics, and some people, you could group it as classes, right? Okay, so let's read the first one. Let's read the second one. Given that we are so vulnerable, on the run, and psychologically susceptible to remain trapped within our confusion, how is it that we actually flip the script and begin to write our lives out of a place of West's incredible beauty, delicacy and sophistication and refinement and human endeavor to preserve sanity? That's a quote from Cornel West. They listened to a 50-minute speech. They had to transcribe it, every single word, exactly. They couldn't even miss an and. It took 3 days to do it. And basically, it was a rewinding exercise. What? Right? And Cornel West, if you've ever listened to Cornel West, he speaks in $3 sentences. He's got 9 commas in the sentence and 3 semicolons and some dashes, right? And you're like, dang, I can't tell where. So what that is it's a way of loving words, because we hear deep music and deep things, and we go, that was really deep. And then 1 minute later, after we go pee, hey, what do you think it meant? I don't know, but it was deep. We aren't going to be successful that way. We feel it like, that was great, man, that was a great movie. Let's turn on to something else, like a football game, and right? Our mind will get blown by that. That's just part of the whole thing. So how is it we flip the script and begin psychologically susceptible to remain trapped within our confusion? How do we flip the script? West's incredible beauty, delicacy, sophistication. Brown, that's the author of Man Shall in the Promised Land, Making It Inside the Ghetto, and Krishnamurti's Inward Revolt. Right? How do you bring those 3 authors together to flip what the other author said, which is that we're trapped in confusion, right? And they have to write about that. All right. By the way, this phrase is important. One story that we can't stand in Umoja is a pity story. Umoja works foremost with African American students for African American student success, foremost. It's illegal to do that in California straight up, right? Since Prop 209. So all our communities are open. Some are very diverse, but my class, for example, 40 some odd students, is 3 non-African American students. It's published, open, and everything, but it's foremost for African American student success. Why? Because African American students aren't doing well. And no matter what money came into the system for the last 40 years, they still weren't doing well. And millions and millions and millions of dollars have poured into improving things with students and didn't change a dang thing, literally, for African American students. So that's why it has to be intentional, at least from our point of view. All right, let me shut up and get to the students. So did you get any language out of that? You at least have to pull, you have to quote. You're quoting, remember? You forgot your job. You have to pull something somewhere. You don't have to, of course. You could just sit there. It's a free country, right? So I never finished my ideas. One thing in Umoja that we don't like is sort of this whole notion of a hero story, the black man who made it out of the ghetto, sort of that story. Our students are living in difficult situations, many of them, most of them, and they'll talk about it and they hear it in hip-hop songs and they've seen it projected onto them by America all the time, make it out of the ghetto. Well, this book is not about making it out of the ghetto. It's about making it inside the ghetto, so-called ghetto. It's about figuring out how to navigate that situation and still be in it. And that's very important, by the way. Believe it or not, that's a pedagogy. Because your students will often feel like you're forcing them to divorce themselves from their home life. Because they'll feel so different in your class from the way they feel at the kitchen table that you've created almost a split personality because you're so unaware of who they are. That you're like profoundly unaware. You're like deeply, deeply disconnected from who they are. And that's a mess. That right there is a mess. I'm not saying all of us, but that's so true. Okay, here's the students. Any questions? Don't wait, cancel. Nothing, by the way, nothing I'm saying is, I don't know you, so it's not personal. I'm not trying to get at you or anything. Okay, this is about 10 minutes. So these students walk out of the final. I sent a male student to video them. All the films we made 100 of them. They're all student voices. They've all been made by movies. So the reason he chose 5 males is because he's afraid of girls, this videographer. He's seriously serious. He's never had a girlfriend. He just panics around it, right? A girl comes in the room and he's just like, you know, he can't talk. He looks the other way. He immediately has to leave because he just freaks out around girls. So I knew he wasn't going to choose girls. I told him to choose some girls in the mix too. He grabbed him out of the final. They walked out the door and he said, I unlocked the door across the hall, and he brought him over there. And he started asking him questions. Capture their language.
When I came, I haven't been to school in a couple of years, so when I came, I was nervous.
Just because they feared that they would be criticized by the knowledge that they have to share with other people. They feel so for them, because my statements don't sound as good as this person's statements, what I'm saying hold no value. With that fear, it taught us to actually how to approach a fear situation, being in the midst of the fear and how to address it. You know, how do I deal with this fear? How do I take this fear and put it in my pocket? You know what I mean? And actually display and verbalize what it is I gotta say. And he had something to say that I feel was way more important. I still felt the confidence within myself, and I addressed that fear to actually speak on what it is that I have to say.
Reading is one of my weak points. I can't even tell you when I finished the book. Oh, Harry Potter, number 1 and 2. But I haven't finished the book since then. You know, and then I finished the man-child book. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I was going to make it all the way, but I actually did.
At first, it used to be so much dilemma. You see it like, man, I never signed out, I'm going to do this. And now it's like, oh yeah, I need to write about this time, you know what I'm saying? So it's easier to produce it.
Don't be afraid of discontent. To give endorsement until the spark becomes a flame and you are everlastingly discontented with everything, with your jobs, with your families, with the traditional pursuit of money, position, power, so that you really begin to think and discover.
I say the structure of the classroom taught us a lot. It taught us how to actually use our minds and to apply it to the work.
Basically, to me, that's saying, like, if you're not doing nothing, if you don't know what's really going on, you basically just fall off the face of the earth.
Analytical skills got better as the year progressed, so it was pretty easy to connect everything together, especially after we talked about it in class.
Don't fall submissive to subordination. Don't try to be, basically, don't be a conformist. Basically. Be your own creative, unique person.
The way that our minds was trained throughout the course, it showed us how to actually analyze and to connect certain things with different poles. Krishnamurti stated that this is our world. You know, everybody in it, the people, this is our world. It's not the people, it's our world.
Explain it, break it down in series so that you can understand it and also think about it and apply it to yourself also.
You have to think for yourself. You have to think in ways that you're not used to thinking. Fernando was saying, like, keep learning, like, you don't have to be used to being uncomfortable.
Goodman is saying that Proverbs and politics, Christian